This past week, we commemorated Yom HaZikaron and remembered all those who have fallen in the line of duty for Hakamat Medinat Israel, for the establishment of the modern state of Israel, and in Pigoei HaTeror, and in all the terrorist incidents throughout the world, Jews who paid the highest price. And then we celebrated Yom HaAtzmaut, Israeli Independence Day, Israel at 73, for all it represents, the powerful accomplishments of the Jewish people in our era, and the godliness, the miracles hidden and revealed that we see in this miraculous reality. Each year when Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut are commemorated and celebrated, the Israel of the past, the present, and the future come into focus for me. Not that anyone can tell the truth about the future, and we may just be witnesses to seeing it unfold, or ourselves feel some both responsibility and potential power to influence its outcome. We get a glimpse into a dynamic reality unfolding, a historical story of great accomplishment and vision and dream, present that we can connect to through language and through heartstrings and through family, friends in the state of Israel, and who share a love and connection to our homeland. And then to think about a future. This is that time of year that we focus in and remember and celebrate and think deeply about Eretz Yisrael and Medinat Yisrael. In fact, I was taken by an article that appeared in Mosaic this week on April 14th, written by Martin Kramer, who teaches Middle Eastern history and served as founding president at Shalem College in Jerusalem. Consequential sentences. That's what came into focus. Consequential sentences. He brought forward what Ben Gurion declared on Friday afternoon, May 14th, 1948. ER 5, Hey Be'er, the 5th of ER, 5708. Here is what he said. Anu machrizim bazot al hakamat medinat yehudit be'eretz Yisrael. He Medinat Yisrael. Anu machrizim bazot. We hereby declare al hakamat medina yehudit be'eretz Yisrael, the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Yisrael, to be known as He Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel. As Kramer put it, this was at once an end to 2,000 years of exile and dispersion, and the restoration of the Jews' sovereign self-determination in their own land. We hereby declare is the modern equivalent of the biblical Hineni. Here I am, an affirmation of presence and an assumption of responsibility. It is the key passage in Israel's Declaration of Independence. I was fascinated with Kramer's choice of linking Anu Machrizim and Hineni. I think it is in a Jew's heart, in a Jew's soul, in a professor's mind, to try to find and recover the historical chains of history, the links in that chain to our own time, and to claim for ourselves with a Zionist sensibility and passion that we are indeed reclaiming in the land of Israel Jewish presence in whatever organizational way that needs to happen, which is the Medina, which is the apparatus of statehood, but that we are reclaiming the Holy Land as habitable space with biblical flora and fauna, the archaeological layers of our own family's past, the writing on the wall, literally, bones in their holy sanctuaries, that we are not making a radical new land without deep foundations that are of the old, that are proximate, that are a rebuilding. This is not some fictional new universe, Medinat Yisrael. This is reestablishing ourselves on the bedrock of our homeland, which also is in our collective consciousness the very foundation for the Jewish state in the land of Israel, today called Medinat Yisrael, the state of Israel. In thinking about consequential sentences, I was remembering and thinking about Herzl's very important consequential sentence. If you will it, it is not a dream. Put in a little bit more context, this sentence was important in the work, Herzl's utopian novel, Alt Neuland, in which Herzl described the details of everyday life in this new Jewish state, a new reality built on that bedrock, that foundational architecture and archaeology that we've mentioned. And here he brings with him fellow Jewish travelers. And here is a land and a state, a structure for a society that not only helps every Jewish soul realize and recognize an ultimate connection with the past and a new language and vision for a future which is unbelievably imaginative and blossoming in a world of both feeling one's home base and place is reinvented from the ancients, but is being crafted anew by a collective consciousness and through a collective will with people of one's own and travelers who've come to appreciate how unbelievably perfectible this vehicle is of a Jewish state in Palestine, of the land of Israel containing that apparatus of realizing visions of peoplehood and society. If you will it, it is not a dream. Herzl's utopian vision, of course, is much more utopian than the very practical Ben-Gurion sentence. We're declaring the establishment of a Jewish state in the land of Israel, and it's to be known as the state of Israel, as statehood and national organization and body politic that refers to, all comes into clear focus on that eventful fateful, incredible day in Tel Aviv, May 14, 1948. Taking these two sentences together, we are able to focus on the Israel of the past, the present, and the future. We're able to create a multi-layered vision and view of Israel. And we're able to, when commemorating as we did with Yom HaZikaron, and think of the high price that the Jewish people and our family has paid for the establishment of today's Medinat Yisrael. And when we think of the celebration of 73 years of independence and the flourishing and the flowering of Israeli culture and all that it holds for Jews and others in that laboratory of a Jewish state of today that does indeed have more diversity and complexity than most imagine, we are able to sense that there's a very reality on the ground, and yet even still a potential and a dream to unfold and to be part of making and to bridge into, even though at some point in Jewish consciousness, people like the long sojourn of exile. When we allow ourselves to get closer, when we allow ourselves to focus in on those consequential sentences, when we allow ourselves to vision ourselves as part of Am Yisrael, of the Jewish people who has a portion in Eretz Yisrael, who are part of state makers in the modern sensibility of what states mean, but who are part of vision makers in the sense that Herzl imagined and dreamed about, then we ourselves are part of the greatness of this chapter of history. I don't think like Amos Oz, the great Israeli writer, who said that he spoke about himself as a writer first. I am fundamentally a Jewish writer, but I am a Jewish writer in the sense of writing forever about the ache to have a home and then having one, aching to go away, thinking that this is not the real one. Unless he means that as a Jewish traveler, as someone who's deeply committed to writing our stories as Jews, that when we find ourselves thinking about our home in Israel, our homes in America, our homes anywhere, that when we have them, we ache to go away from them because they can't be the real ones. If we only imagine the fictional ones and we long for those, or we yearn, like there's good yearning in fiction, or we dream and we can't accept where we live because the dreams haven't been realized yet. If we don't see ourselves, though, at home there, or feel ourselves at home there, then we are lost, and exile becomes the spiritual state that we exist in always. But to be a little in exile, and to know that we have times that we wander through the wilderness, as this period of the Omer teaches us in a spiritual sense, and to think of ourselves as moving towards and returning to or inheriting that Jewish state in the land of Israel that is today Medinat Yisrael, then I could be with him. But entirely exiled from that home, thank God we do not have to feel these days. We do not have to be. We commemorated Yom HaZikaron, and we remember all those who gave their lives and paid the highest price for Hakamat Medinat Yisrael, for the establishment of the state of Israel. We celebrated with Am Yisrael 73 years of strength and his Israeli stories unfolding. Every individual who has one, and collectively as a people, globally, we are part of that great chapter that miraculous chapter of history where we again have sovereignty in our land over a state that's our own, a Jewish state that Ben-Gurion declared that day with such a consequential sentence. Anu machrizim bezot al hakamat medina Yehudit be'eretz Yisrael, hi Medinat Yisrael. We hereby declare the establishment of a Jewish state in Eretz Yisrael to be known as the State of Israel. Shabbat Shalom.